r/AskReddit, people who are taking antidepressants, what does it feel like when they work? When they actually worked for me, it was like I didn't have anxiety anymore. It was completely gone. Now they don't work and I'm the worst I've ever been. I'd tried a few antidepressants that seemed to do very little other than give me awful side effects. Finally got to try an SNRI instead of an SSRI. The first 2 weeks were hell. So many side effects. Unable to drive my car because my arms would just randomly twitch. So nauseous all the time. Then it happened. I woke up one day and the side effects were gone. My brain felt clear and bright. The gravitational heaviness of depression was just gone. It was absolutely beautiful. I realized I'd probably never not been depressed, my whole life, if that was what a brain was capable of feeling. So that's now my gold standard for what an antidepressant should do. Unfortunately, hugely complicated by chronic illness right now, there are some things an antidepressant can't fix. But that's what it felt like when it worked. They typically are good at taking the absolute top and bottom out of a day. So hard to feel joy but also hard to feel desolate. Don't confuse this with numbness though. It's more an obvious stability. For me, anyhow. It can take time to find the right medication and dosage. They're not a magical cure either. There is no magical easy cure. Imagine a person swimming in the sea of life. It can get rough sometimes and knock them underwater. When that happens, it may be a struggle, but they will make it back to the top. Overall, they tend to spend more time swimming at or near the surface. A depressed person doesn't have that same buoyancy. They struggle more to stay afloat. The rough waves knock them under far more easily and deeper than the average person. It's a great struggle and very tiring for them to swim back to the surface. Overall, they may spend more time struggling underwater trying to get back to the surface than the average person. Antidepressants are like swimming floats. With the right one, and dosage for your specific needs, they may grant you a degree of buoyancy similar to the average person. That's basically it. They are a possible way of helping you to cope. It may still be worth learning and practicing other mental health coping techniques too. It can be difficult, but some techniques have helped me. I'd suggest seeing what your local mental health support groups have to offer and/or speak to your GP. For example, here in the UK there's a support group called Mind. Their website is https://www.mind.org. UK/. It's all a question of finding out what works best for you personally. It's easier for me to brush unimportant things off my shoulder. Like if someone was rude to me, I'd be like, meh, that's not my problem, I know I did nothing wrong and maybe they're just having a bad day. So, my anxiety mostly went away. It's nice. I'm on Celexa if that helps. Took maybe 10 days for me and you start to feel more normal, like not just down all the time where you can't get up mentally. As in, very serene. It was so peaceful, some might say empty, that I could finally think clearly. See things as it is. I'm still experiencing normal emotions, just not as intensely as before, and it seems like the breaking point, the point where I start to feeling overwhelmed, has been higher. My suicidal ideation is significantly less consuming. I want to exist. Wellbutrin significantly stabilized my mood swings. I used to get super overwhelmed and depressive out of nowhere a couple times a month. I struggled with decision paralysis and couldn't handle tough news without spiraling for a few days. I was emotionally withdrawn from my friends and family and lost all interest in my lifelong hobbies. Therapy and exercise did nothing, so I can definitely attribute the massive improvement to the drug. I finally feel normal again after 2 years. For me, I took Lexapro for anxiety, not necessarily for depression. But within about 5 days I felt a million times better. Been on them for 2 years now. I have no anxiety at all. None. It wiped my panic attacks away to the point where I don't even recall what they felt like. That being said, the trade-off is that I have gained a lot of weight, have a very low sex drive, and don't really feel excitement anymore, but I feel just a general overarching feeling of contentment that I quite enjoy. I understand that won't work for everyone, but it's good for me and where I am in my life right now. I take Zoloft, and while it doesn't fix everything, obviously, and therapy helps a ton too, it allows me to feel YAAI more stable than I would without it. Like someone else said, it sort of takes the bottoms and tops out of the day. While that may sound like it would make you experience the good parts a lot less, I would choose that a million times over the lows. Only bad part, zero sex drive. That's the best part for me, they don't. I took Zoloft for anxiety and depression in high school. They literally made me feel nothing. Like I didn't feel depressed anymore and I didn't feel anxious, but I also really didn't feel anything or care. It also gave me a weird roller coaster stomach feeling every once in a while. I also had the worst time coming off them because this was in 00-03, and apparently my doctor did not know you were supposed to wean off it. So I had a horrible year after that. Then I found out when I stay away from my family I have 80% less anxiety and barely any depression. So I feel like I solved the problem. I was on Zoloft briefly when I was young and it felt like suddenly nothing. I went from being in intense and overwhelming emotional pain with constant anxiety, to not really feeling much of anything at all. I wasn't in pain, but I also wasn't happy, and I felt strangely out of body. Like I was just alive, kicking about my day to day, nothing more, nothing less. Admittedly an improvement upon the alternative, but I didn't like that feeling either and ended up coming off of it. Among other things, I figured that if it was possible for me to live without the pain of depression because of a pill, it was also technically possible without the pill, since nothing about my life had actually changed from being on the medication. It was just my interactions with my life that changed. Once the medication took the edge off, I could move forward. So I came off the Zoloft and just kept moving, as if I were still on it. It took me a long time to find a medication that made me feel different. Almost everything had absolutely zero effect. What I'm on now, bupropion, was different. Suddenly a couple weeks after starting, my executive dysfunction lessened significantly. No longer was it an insurmountable task to take care of my body, to make good food choices, to be able to reflect and process the dark parts of my life without falling off an emotional cliff. It certainly doesn't replace therapy, but it gives you the chemistry to be able to fix your life how you want to. I actually feel in control now, and I feel as though I can dream again. You're looking at the world through a window about 20 feet away. 33 YRS of SSRIs. The world became just a little brighter. And my mind stopped dwelling on negative spirals. I liken to just a touch of something to help me be closer to how everyone else feels. I was able to thin again, make friends, be a better parent. Didn't cure me or take away depression, but it made it less of the driver in my life and more of a passenger I forget about sometimes. I started taking citalopram around a year and a half ago. It killed all of my anxiety, and made a huge impact on my depression. I haven't taken medication for 15 years. It had killed my anxiety, but I can see how the depression can persist. When you get the right medication, you won't notice adverse conditions. It's not a permanent fix, and any blissful feelings people are mentioning are most likely some form of placebo effect. At best, the meds keep people from experiencing the extreme lows, the trade-off being they also keep you from experiencing extreme highs. It's more about stabilizing than anything. Was on Lexapro. My anxiety went down a bit for the first 3 months, but then I became extremely depressed and apathetic about everything. Bonus points for having a numb dry vagina, zero interest in anything sexual, and crying at the drop of a hat. For example, my bestie brought me a sandwich while I was at work and I could not stop crying for over 2 hours because I felt like I didn't deserve it. Went off of it and had withdrawal symptoms for 6 months. Gotta love feeling like you're being tossed in the brain every 10 to 15 minutes non-stop. Also for about 4 months afterwards, I got slightly more depressed and my anxiety not only came back, but escalated to full-blown panic disorder. On the bright side, I could feel my genitals again and I didn't feel numb. Something I found out later is that I have numerous close family members with bipolar disorder, so being on an antidepressant was probably one of the worst things I could have done. It's a miracle that it didn't trigger some form of bipolar in all honesty. After coming off of it, I will never go on an antidepressant ever again. In the beginning I suddenly had a ton of energy, sometimes it could be described as euphoria. Now that I have a tolerance, I have a reasonable amount of energy and sleep much better. My first 2 months taking ads were amazing, bipolar 2. The best I've ever felt. That then became a lethargy from flattening my mood. In fairness, they did their job, and continued for 10 years. I've now been coming off them over the past couple of months and experiencing again the highs and lows each day that were missing over the last decade has been interesting. I've always said antidepressants don't make you happy, they stop you jumping in front of a bus while you work through your challenges. For me it was the right decision to go onto them, and I think it was the right decision to come off them when I have. Mine worked very gradually at first. About 3 weeks in, my company had a reorg and boss told me to update my resume, just in case. When he said that I was like, ugh, that sucks, but okay, I'll update my resume, and then I was like, wow. The fact that I absorbed the news without any panicking, crying, spiraling, etc. would have been impossible 3 weeks earlier. For me, it feels like my reactions to things are suddenly proportional to the problem. They've been such a game changer. It feels like a decrease in the frequency and severity of symptoms. A lot of people expect instantaneous, full remission of symptoms or expect to feel elated with them, which isn't realistic. When I finally found the one that worked for me, venlafaxine, it calmed my rough seas and steadied my boat so I could begin to figure out where I am and steer safely towards the nearest port. It's really the one thing that's made enough of a difference that I can begin my recovery from depression. Met takes the edge off. It feels like a weight has been lifted from my chest, and the knot in my throat is gone. It feels like I can make it through anything that comes my way. It doesn't feel like anything, that's the neat part. No dread, no anxiety, no weight. You just are, and it's weird when you notice. But emotions are a lot more stable, both up and down. Think of it like a sinus wave with its amplitude reduced. Depends on the person. For me, it suppressed my depression enough from suicidal to unhappy, and it suppressed other more positive things too. Libido, I experienced emotional blunting. Happy was something I could not experience on them. I've seen others go from caring to selfish, having no care about hurting others / doing illegal things. And then others completely lose inhibitions. Not everyone has these experiences, these are only ones I have witnessed. Maybe my family's brain chemistry does not work well with antidepressants. I suppose in comparison I got off lucky, but I still wish I hadn't touched them. They are ridiculous to get off too, you have to wean off them, and the side effects of that are brutal. I'd like to know face with tears of joy. Never noticed a difference. In terms of how they make a person feel, antidepressants may have a number of positive effects. The person taking the antidepressant has increased energy and is calmer, Dr. McGee says. They have improved motivation and their sleep and appetite are better regulated. Depends on the type. What I take, bupropion, is kind of just feeling a little more awake and caring a little bit more than I do without it. SSRIs never worked for me, they just left me hollow. I'd been taking some kind serotonin-based drug. What I was feeling is that it is difficult to cause either bad or good emotions. It was like emotional blindness, I was just deafened by the logic. Also, this drug stimulated the brain, so I was able to do my work with high productivity. But after Ho stopped taking it, it feel like hangover, some kind of pressure in the head. They don't make me feel good or euphoric, generally I just don't experience a bout of depression. Many times I don't even connect the dots till later in the day. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you have enjoyed this video and subscribe to never miss an upload.